Hey, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, Identity and Influence Edition. This is where me and my buddy Lem talk about big ideas and we invite you into the conversation. So, my name is Mo, and I'll be sitting in the host chair with Dr. Lem Usita. Dr. Lem, what's up, man?
Sir, good to see you. I always look forward to our time together, breaking down leadership, talking about the things that we're learning. Really excited about today's lesson, as I am every single freaking lesson.
I can't believe we're giving away this lesson today for free.
Yeah.
But we are. I asked you and you said, yes, we're going to do it. So it's not even behind the paywall. It is something you developed. It's called the Organizational Diagnostic Grid. Why don't you tell me about that framework in the 30-second elevator speech, and I'll get some questions to you.
It came out of a lot of thinking about actually an organization that I'm working with currently. And, there's always stated problems, but there's, whatever the problem is, there's always underlying issues that kind of exacerbate that problem. And so this organizational diagnostic grid helps you to take a look at an organization and think through what truly is happening. When you have these categories, you listen for certain things, and it's about solving the right problem, because a lot of times we first think that it's a people problem, so we try to fix the people problem, but sometimes it's a systems problem, sometimes it's structure, and it always shows up in ways that we can see, and the invisible stuff is really what we need to fix. And so that's what this whole diagnostic is about.
Let's talk about surface systems versus root causes. One of the big ideas in this lesson is that communication and culture aren't always the root issue. They're often the surface or the symptom where the deeper problems become visible. So why do leaders confuse symptoms with causes?
I think the honest answer is proximity. When you're in your organization, when you're on your team, when you go to the same place every day, you feel the friction before you see what's generating it. So communication breakdown feels like the problem because it's where you experience the pain. It's what's visible, right? And what this diagnostic does is helps you see what's invisible. When you see that the team is confused, people are misaligned, when meetings are unproductive, the instinct is to fix the communication. But communication is just where the condition becomes readable. It's the readout, not the source. So the real discipline is learning to ask, what is producing this pattern? That's a harder question because the answer is usually further back in the system than it feels. And we wanna address the immediate thing. And so again, we just tend to think like communication is the issue, but communication is just a readout. It's just what's visible. And you gotta ask those deeper questions to figure out what's the source.
Yeah, I'm reminded of what Patrick Lencioni says about this, that organizational health gets ignored sometimes because leaders are too busy chasing the most obvious issue instead of diagnosing the deeper dysfunction within the team. And so they get caught up on the little things and they forget to make the main thing the main thing.
Yep. That's exactly it.
Yeah. So, you talk about how leaders can over-personalize problems inside their organization. So why do leaders tend to assume broken systems are actually people problems when in reality they're probably something very different?
There's a few reasons. Like I was already saying, people problems are visible and system problems are underlying. They're invisible. You don't necessarily see it. So you can see a person underperforming, but you can't always see that their role has no clear decision rights, or that the handoff process that they depend on has never been defined. I've seen that so many times in organizations. Another reason is there's something psychologically easier about locating the problem in a person, again, because it feels actionable, because it's a visible thing, and you can coach them and you can move them and you can even replace them. But redesigning a workflow or restructuring authority is a lot slower and less satisfying in the short term because you don't get those immediate results. And I think one last reason is leaders are often working from their own experience. They succeed by adapting to imperfect systems, right? Actually, you can step up your leadership in imperfect systems so you look better. And so they expect others to do the same, and when they don't, it reads as character or commitment issue rather than a design feature. Like so many times in organizations, I've seen broken systems and broken structures drive behavior, and the leaders just want to fix the behavior, they want to fix the person, they want to fix the communication, and they never fix the root problem. And so, you just kind of keep getting the same results over and over again.
Yeah, and this is why a lot of leaders just automatically and naturally shift towards the blame game. They figure
Yeah,
it's somebody's fault, somebody's problem, when in reality, instead of just pointing to the person and saying it's your fault, maybe it's the process. Maybe that's broken. Maybe the expectations weren't clear. And that's
yeah,
why we always talk about everything rises and falls on leadership, as John Maxwell says. Because if your people are doing something wrong, you could probably look in the mirror and find out where you messed it up. And it's probably a systems problem. It's probably something to do, mainly with the processes that you have or probably haven't put in place. And so
yeah.
you can't get upset for somebody not doing what they didn't know they were supposed to do because you never told them.
Yep, yep. And that's what's broken, not the person necessarily.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's why people leave teams because they're like, I don't know what this guy wants. I don't know what this
Yeah.
lady wants. I'm going to go somewhere else. But the problem is they go to the next person and that person plays the same blame game and whatever. So leaders, stop blaming your people. You're the problem is the main gist of this conversation. So one of the examples that you give in this article or this framework is that the role of confusion gets labeled as poor attitude or even inconsistent execution gets blamed on talent before leaders ever even
Man.
examine structure, workflow, accountability. So why is that dangerous and why does this mistake continually plague leaders?
It's dangerous and it continues to plague because it creates compounding damage. So if you misread a structural problem as a people problem, you apply pressure to the wrong place. And then that person gets coached and managed and maybe even moved on. But then the next person that walks in is in the same exact broken system. And then it produces the same result like we were talking about. So you've now burned a relationship, right? Because again, you got rid of somebody, but you still haven't fixed anything. And then worse, the culture absorbs that lesson. And again, like when you're deep in it, it's hard to see. So people learn that when things go wrong, someone gets blamed. So they stop surfacing problems and they stop taking initiative. And you end up with a culture of self like protection layered on top of this operational dysfunction. And that's a much harder thing to undo. And then as I was, and I also want to add part of the reason why we can't see the systems and the structures as leaders is because we probably put them in place. And so in order to fix something broken that we put in place, we got to admit that it's broken as a leader, and a lot
Yeah.
of people don't want to do that. And I've worked for organizations where I've seen people like, well, this is the system, this is the structure, this is what we got to do. And like when you're not in charge, you can point it out and say, well, but it doesn't work. But then I've seen leaders just like, well, they just don't get it. People just don't get it. And I'm like, the system's broken, the structures are broken, and that's why people are failing. And so as a leader, it's hard for you to see that sometimes because you're the one that put that in play.
Yeah, and leaders, if your people just don't get it, again, you are the problem. Now, if your entire team gets it and one person isn't getting it, well, then it's
Yes.
probably not your problem. It's probably they don't understand. But then that's not a problem because the rest of the team would help them understand. But
Yeah.
when your
Yeah.
people just don't get it and you're the genius in the room and everybody else is a bunch of dummies,
Yeah.
I got another thing coming to you. You're the dummy. So
Yeah.
fix what's broken. What's broken is you. So I'll give you. I'll give our audience an example from what we use at Rising Tide. Right, we use the disc profile, and so somebody who is maybe a high S personality, which is the supportive personality, the people that just want to get along, they don't want to ruffle any feathers. Tell me the rules, so we can just all make sure that nobody gets upset with anybody else. If you are dealing with this kind of person and you have an S style person on your team, if they don't get clarity, they're going to stop taking initiative because they're going to be afraid of being wrong. And
Yeah.
so they're going to shut down. And then when they shut down because they're confused and you're inconsistent, then all of a sudden they don't get it. And now you got to
Yeah.
get rid of this person because they haven't
Yeah.
bought in. When in reality, if you knew how to lead to that S personality, that supportive person, you would
Yeah.
be more effective, more communicative, and you would be able to take initiative to help them understand. So, man,
Yeah.
I love that. And one
No,
more
that's really
thing,
good.
It makes me think of Marcus Buckingham's book, First Break All the Rules. Great
Hmm.
book. I know you've read it, so have I. A lot of leaders have read it to this point, right? But
Yeah.
he says that great leaders look for the fit between the person's talents and the environment around them. I love that.
Yeah.
He says find good people and then, help their talents, fit the environment around them. So
Yeah.
if the
Yeah.
environment's broken, guess what?
Yeah.
Leaders, I know it's your fault, right? So when your people underperform, again, look in the mirror, ask yourself, what am I not being clear on?
Oh, I
So
like it.
yeah, man. So let's talk about diagnosing the right problem, right? We've talked about the wrong thing and where to shift the blame on the wrong thing, but walk us through the four root domains in your organizational diagnostic grid, which are leadership, structure, systems, and process, and of course, people and talent. So, how can leaders begin to figure out which of these domains is actually causing the issue that they're seeing and where to put their efforts?
Yeah, I really, really like that this diagnostic gives you that grid where you can take a look and see things, because the things you can see are communication issues and you feel what's happening in the culture. That's where it's visible and seen. And then you take that next layer down. So just think of it as a hierarchy that runs from the most structural to the most personal, right? And so right at the top is leadership, right? Direction, authority, priorities, accountability. Is it a leadership problem? And most leaders will probably not think it's a leadership problem because they're sitting there. But if leadership is unclear or inconsistent, then everything downstream suffers regardless of how well designed the organization is. Now, the next layer down is structure. That's the design layer, how roles are arranged, who reports to whom, who has the right to make whatever decisions, right? And then the next layer down is systems and processes where the actual work moves, handoffs, routines, workflows, how information travels. And I think at the lowest level of this hierarchy is the people and the talent. That's the most personal layer, taking a look at, like you were talking about, capability, fit, readiness, or judgment. These are the four possible root problems that you could solve for. And so most people go to the lowest, which is the people problem. But sometimes it's systems, sometimes it's structure, sometimes it's leadership. The key diagnostic move is to start at the layer closest to the work and move up only if you have to, right? So before you conclude that it's a leadership problem, ask whether the process is broken. Before you conclude that it's a people problem, ask whether the structure is producing the behavior you dislike. Because sometimes it's built into the structure and the culture, and we're trying to fix the people problem, but the true problem, the root cause of it, is a structure problem. Most of the time, when leaders feel like they have a people problem, what they might actually have is that process problem or a structure problem. And that problem, that systems or structure problem, sometimes make good people look really bad. And so this diagnostic really kind of helps you to see, like, what is the root problem? What's the real problem I'm trying to solve? And it's not always a people problem, but that's what I think most leaders go to first. Well, it's a people problem. It's not my problem as a leader. It's not the system or the structure that I designed. It's them, right? And so, like, this diagnostic really helps us to kind of break it down, and it gives you a grid to take a look at things and solve the right.
Yeah, I love this diagnostic because we always talk about Jim Collins and getting the right people on the bus in his book Good to Great. But
Hmm.
even Jim Collins acknowledges that the great organizations, once you get the great people, you have to have the right seats. You have to have the right
Yeah.
structure. You have to have the right
Yeah.
direction. You could have the
Right.
greatest people in the world, but if you don't have the right structure and processes, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
They're going to get
Right.
frustrated and they're going to leave. So
Right.
get the
That's
right
good.
people, but if you're going to get the right people leaders, you need to make sure you can handle them, which makes me think you're not the great leader that you think you are. So get better. Man, I'm being all kinds of mean today.
I love it.
Yeah, man.
You're being
So,
real.
yeah, I try to hold it back and get it out either before or after we record, but sometimes it comes out right in the middle.
I love it.
You mentioned that leaders need what you call, quote, diagnostic distance, close quote,
Yes. Yep.
because they often, get too close to the problem. So what does this look like for a leader to step back and to create enough distance to see the organization more clearly?
I think the first thing is to know that you need diagnostic distance and to just kind of have this category. And diagnostic distance is the capacity to see the system rather than just feel it or be in it. Like when you're too close, when you're swimming in it, every symptom feels personal and urgent. That diagnostic distance means that you can observe the pattern without immediately being captured by it. So practically, it can look like asking different questions, right? Instead of why isn't this person performing, we should be asking what conditions would produce this behavior in anyone, right? It's a take a step back kind of question. It can look like mapping the work rather than evaluating the people. You still have to evaluate the people, but take a step back and also take a look at the structures and the systems. It can look like a facilitator or a coach walking you through a structured diagnostic rather than responding to your first read of the situation. The grid itself is a tool for creating that distance. It slows the reflex down and it replaces it with sequence. And when you take a look at the diagnostic further, it gives you like a process, it gives you questions to ask so that you're really working through that process and you're not just reacting to the situation.
Yeah, and Ronald Heifetz talks about this in Leadership Without Easy Answers, what he calls, quote, getting on the balcony, close quote, which is
Yeah.
where you step off the dance floor just a moment and you say, okay, what are the patterns that everybody else is doing and what are people not noticing because they're too busy? And I think that's what
Yeah.
great leaders do. They take
Right.
the time to step away and step outside of even themselves and look from the outside looking in and say, what am I missing here? And that's why you need to have good systems and structures in your own life. Men and women who are coaching you and mentoring you to ask those hard questions. And so, in disc terms, let's take a high I personality, for instance.
Okay.
Leaders might rely too much on their instincts and their
Mm,
relationships, right? They just think, I know what I need to do,
yeah.
but they don't always. So, they sometimes have to step outside of themselves and say, where am I missing it? And so, leaders, the question for you is one, what's your personality style? If you don't know,
Yeah.
a shameless plug.
Yep.
You need to take the disc assessment. You need to take our disc assessment.
Yeah.
That's the one. It's in depth. We go over it with you and we say, look, this is the it doesn't put you in a box. It actually frees you from the box that you've been putting yourself in for your
Yeah.
entire life. And you say, here's who I am. We help you step outside of yourself and say, what have I been missing with my people this whole time? So great leaders make sure that they take the time to notice, which leads me again to my last question, which is this. One of the most practical parts of this lesson is the idea that intervention has to match the actual problem. So,
Yeah.
can you explain why it's so important for leaders to avoid jumping straight into accountability or personal changes before they've actually tested whether or not the real issue is a structural issue or an operational issue?
Yeah, the end of the day, the bottom line of this lesson and this operational diagnosis grid is to solve the right problem. And once you've gone through the process, the intervention has to fit the actual problem, not just the visible symptom. Most leaders have a default move when it comes to fixing problems. Some go straight to accountability, some go straight to restructuring, some go straight to hiring somebody else. The default move feels efficient for the leader because it's what they've done, but if it doesn't match the real source, if it doesn't match the root problem, you've just added noise without adding any kind of clarity. So the order matters. First, clarify direction, then look at structure, then examine process, then develop people. Personnel changes should be the last resort, not the first reflex. The moment you make it a people problem before you've tested the system, you've made the diagnosis personal. And now you've lost the ability to see the system clearly. So that's why that diagnostic distance is so key to this idea. The relationship is loaded, trust drops, and even if you realize later it was a process issue, you've already done that damage with that person. And so take the time, slow down, use the diagnostic grid to figure out what the true problem is, the right problem, pick the right intervention for the right root problem. And then it just makes you more efficient and it makes you a better leader because you're actually solving the right problems.
Yeah, I think a lot of leaders use accountability, for instance, as a shortcut because it feels decisive.
Mm.
But, if you hold people accountable for something that they were never even set up to succeed in, you're going to end up creating resentment instead of growth. So,
Yeah. That's good.
And that's just one instance, that came to mind when you were talking. And so for leaders, what is your go-to when
Yeah.
when you have to make a decision and you have to use whatever your default is? What is that default? YouTube audience, we would love to hear what your default is, because I bet you're not alone. And so, for instance, again, as we talk about disc personalities, those who are like maybe high D leaders,
Mhm.
they can overreact. They can become forceful, right? And just like, I got to make a decision now. Like, I got to take control. And if I don't take control of the ship, it's going to sink.
Mhm.
But really, whatever your personality that you lead from, healthy leadership is about finding balance between grace and standards. You see
Yeah,
that?
that's
I
good.
talked about balance for our
I
audience
love
out
it.
there. Dr. Lim hates balance, and I love it. And so I always have to put it in there somewhere. Just I got to
I
sneak it
like
in.
tension. I like tension. Let's not balance. Let's keep it in tension so that we can do
Yeah,
both. It's
I
another
love it.
another another podcast.
Absolutely. We could talk about balance and tension for days. Wrapping up, last kind of final thought about how somebody might apply this to what they're doing right now.
I think we can all learn how to be better leaders. And one of the ways that you could do that is to see the organization and to see yourself and your leadership a little differently, to just take a step back, solve for the right problem, and just be a better leader because of it. There's a
Yeah.
lot of people that just react and it's reflexive and they might get some stuff done, but at the end of the day, you're going to tire yourself out. Let's be better. Let's step up our leadership. And honestly, it makes you a little bit more efficient if you're solving the right problems. Like, you're taking care of things and you're moving on and you're growing, your organization's growing, you're growing. So this organizational diagnostic grid just kind of helps us to do that, be better leaders.
Yeah. I mean, great finish on that. Leaders, don't just react to the symptoms.
Yeah.
Take time to slow down and figure out what's beneath the surface. If you can learn to do that, you're going to make better decisions. You're going to create alignment within your team and within your organization. And the values are actually going to show up in the way that you operate when you make those changes. Adaka, I appreciate those thoughts for our audience. Thanks so much for joining us today on the Rising Tide Leadership Podcast, Identity and Influence. Make sure you visit us at rtclc.com and like, subscribe, and share. Make sure somebody sees this that needs to, like
Yeah.
Dr. Lim said. Let's be better leaders. Until next time, thanks, Dr. Lim.
Thank you.